walked by and sort of like stuck their heads and did a double take. Like, are you drinking? And I was like, no, I promise. And they're like, that's cool. What you got to do?
That is funny.
For some reason, I brought like a pineapple one time. I didn't cut it up. I didn't eat it. I literally just like stuck the pineapple on my little tray next to the chemo infusion pump. And I was like, that's really pleasant to look at. I'm just going to have a pineapple here for no reason. Props kind of morphed into costumes, and then the costumes just kind of took on a life of their own. And by the end of it, I was like, man, I really got to like one up myself from the last one. Like I got a reputation now.
Yeah, they're like, what's she going to bring this week?
Yeah, exactly. And now I have a giant box full of costumes, so I never have to like Halloween costume shop again in my life. So
that's awesome. One thing I was surprised about was the price of wigs. Like when you talk about going to the wig shop with your parents and it was like $11,000. I mean, who knew?
Okay. So yes, that makes me cringe a bit.
That's like a used car.
Girl, what could I buy for? I think at one point in the book, I outlined like what you can buy for like X amount of dollars. Looking back, I'm almost cringing because I'm like, oh my Lanta. Like I really ended up wearing the colorful ones more than the nice, expensive ones. So it by no means was it a waste of money because it's real human hair. I still have the two fancy ones, but I'm like, oh my goodness, that money definitely could have gone to maybe something a little more important, a little better. But in looking up those different wig makers, I really liked what that person's website said. It said like, you know, specific wigs for like cancer and chemo patients. And I just got my diagnosis, I think literally the day before. So my mom, who was out here from Boston, said, let's go shopping. Let's get this done. Like you'll feel better because losing your hair is definitely one of the major counts, right? Oh, and I'd spent, the last like 8 years growing out my hair. So I think like losing my hair was probably worse than like hearing you have cancer.
Yeah.
But mom said, look, let's go see this wig maker. Let's like make you feel good while we're here. So we go, and the woman's place is in Beverly Hills, which should have been the first clue that it was going to be expensive. And we pull up to her building, and it's got these like marble floors, and like it just looks like super sleek. And I was like, okay, now the buttons are starting to buzz that like this might be a pricey hair trip. And then we get to her place, and it's gorgeous. She has all these amazing real imported hair pieces just scattered throughout. And then I start trying on a couple pieces, and I didn't even really think to ask the price until it was time to like settle out. And then I remember when she said the price, I kind of like choked, and I was like, but it was like too late to just, oh, just kidding. Now I'm backing out of this transaction. Like we'd already been in our apartment for like an hour. So poor dad felt like so heartbroken over his daughter, like getting cancer that he was like, oh, okay. If I had to do it again, I probably would have stuck with like the $30, $40 collection of like ridiculous colors and synthetics. But, you know, hindsight versus foresight, right?
And I mean, if it made you feel better, it was probably worth it, you know, at that moment.
It did. It did. It was a bit of comfort, but yeah, that's a hefty price tag, I have to say.
That was one of the most shocking things in the book. I was like, what? That's just not right. I mean, come on, $11,000. That's crazy.
I know, but like, haven't you ever had those moments, or maybe you haven't, but where you've been in line, like checking out at a store and there's 15 people behind you?
Oh, yeah.
You know, you don't want to be the jerk that like suddenly like bows out at the last minute. And that's sort of what that experience became, because I'm like, we're already in this. Like we've been in her place for an hour. She's already sort of like cutting and styling one of the wigs, and I was like, it's just too late to back out, man.
This is happening.
So, yeah, just roll with it and I'll apologize and try and pay you back when I'm 50, you know?
Yeah. Another thing that I think must have been a strange realization, and you talk about it in the book, is just realizing like, you know, oh, wow, I haven't had kids yet, and now I'm not going to be able to have kids.
Yeah.
That really hit me here, you know, thinking like, oh, man, there's nothing you can do. I mean, what can you do?
Yes.
And adopting kids, you talk about how expensive it is. And it is. I've looked into adopting kids, and it is expensive. I'm like $30,000.
Yeah.
Aren't there a lot of kids that need a home? But
yes, there are.
I guess it's not that easy.
Yeah. That whole piece of it, I don't know how much I did or didn't get into it in the book. I think I do touch upon it a few times, but the crazy irony of getting the diagnosis when I did is just a couple months prior, you know, my mom and I had been talking about kids and whether I wanted them. And for a long time, I didn't. But then after I turned 36, I said, well, I might at some point. So why don't I freeze my eggs, or at least look into it? So I very clearly remember having a phone conversation with my mom about, okay, just research freezing your eggs. So I'd done some research online. I think I maybe lightly talked to my gynecologist about like what it would entail. I did a little bit of research on it. So it was very much on my mind that it was something I'd like to do. And then I think like not a month or two later, I get the diagnosis. And I didn't put this part in the book because I don't know how relevant it was, but by that time it was obviously way too late. Like, because we found my cancer at stage 3, which means it had already spread to my uterus and my spleen and my liver and all over my stomach. So my poor little ovaries were dead and gone for quite a while. So there was no chance that I could have frozen my eggs at that time. And not only was it too late to freeze my eggs, I had to have my ovaries and my uterus removed. Yeah. So yeah, during that meeting, it became very clear, like, yep, kids are off the table. But, you know, I know there are women who are adamant about wanting their own children and their own, you know, DNA genetics. And I totally get that and respect that. And everybody needs to do what's right for them. But personally, I wasn't horribly devastated by it because adoption is something that has always really appealed to me. So I remember thinking like, okay, I mean, maybe this isn't ideal, but I wasn't, I guess, completely heartbroken over it. It was more the fact like, okay, well now my mind is made up. Well, now this decision is sort of made for me. So it's got to be adoption or a surrogate or whatever. So that part of it was, I guess, easier to cope with than other parts of getting that news. But again, adoption has just always seemed really cool to me. And knowing that I have this genetic mutation, I'm not sure. I'd probably struggle with the idea of giving birth anyway, being nervous about passing on this genetic mutation that caused my cancer. So it's okay. But yes, like you said, adoption is expensive. IVF is expensive. All of it is quite hefty of a price tag. But, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. I've learned that nothing is impossible. So if I really want to make that happen, I absolutely will. But now is not the time. Yeah, right now I'm sort of just trying to still rebuild life, as it were, and get everything back on track and just moving forward. And we're all in this very surreal existence worldwide together now, too. So when the time is more appropriate to look into adoption and all of that fun stuff, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, in the middle of a global pandemic might not be the best time.
I mean, if there's ever felt like a more inappropriate time to for me to think about like adoption and surrogates, I feel like now might be that time. So
yeah. People always say, you know, because for a long time, I never wanted kids either. And then my biological clock started ticking probably right around 36 or so. And we kind of tried, but it just wasn't happening. You know, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like it wasn't happening. And so you come to this point where you go like, well, if it was really, really, you know, is this just like a biology thing, like a hormone thing? Is it my body saying, you need to have kids? Or is it like, really, do I really want kids? You know, I don't know if you ever had that kind of conversation with yourself, but I certainly did. Like, do I really want children? Or is this just my like biological clock, like freaking out for a minute, you know? And then, you know, sometimes life decides for you. And once you know that, you can kind of, you know, decide what you're going to do about it. Either you're not going to have kids, or maybe you're going to adopt, or, you know, something. I don't know.
Exactly. And there's one thing too that I learned that I really hold on to, not just with cancer, but in life, which is at any given time, right? We just make the best decisions that we can with whatever information like we have at that time, right? So however you're feeling, whatever you know at the time, and again, this is way bigger, that this little mindset is more than just cancer. It's just, you always make the best decision in your life with whatever you have in your hand, not physically, but with the information you know to be true. And that's actually given me a lot of peace of mind, because I've often wondered like, well, what if I get another recurrence? Or what if I don't want to live in LA anymore? Or what if this, all these like fears and questions and everything. But then I really come back to that one mindset, which is, okay, don't worry about the future. Just make every decision right now in the moment with whatever it is that you know in your heart. And that's actually given me a lot of peace in my life. So, and that does relate to the children's question as well, is just maybe things will be different in 6 months, a year, 2 years, or even a few weeks. But just making that decision in that moment with whatever you know, I think that's what it comes back to a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's great advice. I was actually surprised that you are in LA, because by the end of the book, you seem so dedicated to going back to Boston where your family lives. And so what changed about that? Why did you decide to stay in LA?
I mean, that's still on the table. I won't lie. LA's been great to me. I've lived here since 2003. So it's been 17 years.
Why did you move there? Did you come from Boston, straight from Boston to LA?
Yep.
And why?
I was tired of snow, honestly.
It's bad over there.
Oh, totally. Right. And you know cold winters as well, right? From where you're from?
Yeah, I went to college in Massachusetts, so I'm familiar. So you moved here just to be close to the sun.
Exactly. I was just like, no more of this. And my whole life is here now, but I think my heart will always be on the East Coast. New England holds a very special place in my soul. I was born there. My family's there. My friends are there. School's there. But, it's been a really wonderful, wild ride in Los Angeles. But there came a time when I really just yearned to be back near my parents. We're very, very close. I'm very close with both of my brothers. One of my brothers is in Canada. The other is in DC. My parents are still in the Boston area. So my whole family is on that side of the coast. And I think after going through this experience, I realized I really just want to surround myself with people that I love and that love me. And I have so many friends here that I'm so blessed to have in my circle, but nothing is like family to me. Family is the end all be all core. So after getting the diagnosis and realizing kind of what am I doing here? I want to be near my family. It became very clear that I wanted to move back to the East Coast. And again, I'm still sort of working that out. Is that going to happen? Is it not? Obviously now with the world being the way it is and everybody's at home doing their things are still in flux and questionable. And I still have another surgery I need to get through. But I have been freelance writing from home for a few years now. So I do have the flexibility to move if I choose to do so. But now that I'm also turning the book into a script, it would make a bit more sense to stay out here and see if anything could come with that. So the truth of the matter is I have no idea what's going to happen. Again, that mindset comes back even into this question is I'm just making the best decision with what I have in my hand at the moment, right? And I have the surgery. We're all kind of on lockdown with COVID. Who knows what'll happen with the election? Who knows what'll happen with anything? So as of right now, yeah, I'm still in LA, but we'll see what happens this year, next year. I really have no idea.
Yeah. Do they have to push back your surgery because of COVID at all, or no? Is it just on its own timeline?
Yeah, no, it's actually already been pushed. I was actually supposed to have a surgery already in, I think, March, maybe it was April, but it was already supposed to have happened a few months ago. And at first they just kind of canceled it, took it off the books and said, we'll reschedule it when we know more. And then they did offer me a date actually this week. And I was like, I'm still not comfortable. It's an elective surgery. It's obviously not a life-saving surgery. And I figured, with the cases that's still on the rise, I better play it safe. So now it's potentially in September. So we'll again see what happens before that.
And were you always a writer, or I guess I didn't know that you're a writer. I mean, I know now, of course, but when back in the day, when we were all hanging out in the rock scene, I didn't know you were a writer. So were you always one?
No.
What were you doing back then?
Back then, I was actually waiting tables. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everyone does that when they move to LA.
Exactly. I was one of the people that was just a server and not a server/actor. So I was like, it's cool, man.
Wow. You were in the minority.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still, it was a very social job, obviously. And I liked that part of it. Back then, yeah, I think in the early 2000s, I'd just come out here from Boston. I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do. I think at the time I was sort of twiddling around with maybe trying to be a video editor or something in the arts, if you will, creatively, but I still really didn't know. So I took a job in 2005-ish or 6-ish. Working for a post-production company, and I became their business manager. It turned into sort of just financial stuff and non-creative stuff. And I kind of really didn't know, again, what to do with life. So I stayed at that job for about 7 years. And then in 2012, I kind of just on a whim realized I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to learn about marketing, learn about writing. So for 2012, the whole year,